So I imagine they're going to start plopping on here in the next minute or two.
Okay.
Because it starts at 12:40.
Yep.
Is that right?
12:40.
12:40. So they should. I already got that first one out there for put your name and your teacher's name in the live chat.
Sounds good.
Am I going to mess up his team call by talking?
No. I got you. I don't want to like speak over his teacher.
It's not bad. Like less than 10 seconds right now.
Okay.
So that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it gets 30 seconds soon.
Yeah. Well, and again, it'll like warning.
Holy smokes!
The stream is horrible.
We have nobody on right now.
Well, it just turned 12:40. So my guess is
Okay.
they know that 12:40 is the beginning and hop on and they get on YouTube. So we'll just give it a minute or two.
I tell you what, dude, like standing up all day, so my legs hurt, my back hurts. Like, what in the world?
I can't. Like that's what happened to me on yesterday. I came in, I was like, oh wow, I'm exhausted. I taught like half the time. That's it. I taught 5 and 7. And that's it. And I was like, why am I exhausted?
I woke up this morning like cold and I hurt.
Just give you an idea of what we're looking at with. Sweet. Oh, 15. So there's 15 in. Again, there's that lag. See, it's like starting to get a little.
Okay. So what's the difference between these two?
That I don't know.
Okay. Go with that one. Gotcha.
I normally look at this one, and you can actually. Let me see if I. Again, we're so behind that. So YouTube says 19 are currently watching.
19 right now too.
So,
Okay.
um,
How many are you supposed to have?
it's small. I have like 16.
Okay.
Twelve.
22.
22, sorry. 12, yeah. So 22. So it's bigger than I thought.
I think I have 16.
Oh,
So
there
we
we
have
go.
we have about
They're,
30.
they're starting to.
So we're about halfway. So why don't you go ahead and make an announcement that we'll start in about 3 minutes.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to our 6th period live lecture. We're going to give it just another couple minutes, I don't know, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, to let everybody from my class, Mr. Ewald's 6th period class, Mr. Wen is here in the house from his 6th period class. So we'll give it just a couple more minutes for everybody to get on here. One big thing that I want to mention, and I'll say this again in a couple of minutes. Definitely pay attention, follow along, participate via YouTube, but it's super important that you also have a piece of paper, a notebook, a binder, whatever it is, so that you can jot down some of your own notes and answers to questions on your own paper. Treat it just like a class, just like when we do notes in class, or when you've done notes in class, you want to have something next to you so you can jot those notes down. So let's give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll come back together and we'll get this going. All right.
See, it's kind of jumpy. Oh no, I don't want to do that. No.
Did you just mess up?
No.
Is everyone off?
No, it's still on. That would have been horrible. Okay, I'm gonna do this one time and then this thing's probably not very good either. So that'll go dark in a second.
Forgot for a second.
It just went dark.
All right, one more minute, guys. We will give some others. That puts us at 12:45. So another minute, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, somewhere in there for everybody to get logged on and get their name and their teacher's name in that live chat. Then we'll get going. Thank you for coming.
God damn it, why? Oh, we'll just have to roll with it. Hope it works. Ready? Let's do it.
All right, guys. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get into this. I'm Mr. Ewald. Hopefully all, if not a large majority of my 6th period students are here in this live lecture. Over here we got Mr. Wen. You'll see him here in a little bit, but hopefully his 6th period has come to join us as well. Quick reminder, make sure you have something to write on, notebook, binder, whatever it might be with a pen or a pencil. Take notes just like you would in a normal class. So pretend that you're sitting in the classroom, I'm up here in front of you, and you're jotting down notes as we're talking about the stuff that we're going to talk about today. So please do that. If we ask you to throw anything into the live chat, make sure that you do that. We're over the school's Wi-Fi. We're doing this from Mr. Wen's room, so there may be lags. It might get a little bit choppy. Just bear with us. Be patient. Maybe let us know in the chat that something's not working, okay? So let's get right into it. Today we're going to talk about basically something called the scientific method. But we're going to start with this idea of what is science, all right? So when you think about science, what pops into your head? When you think about science you took in elementary school and middle school and up to this point in high school, what pops into your mind? For me, science is a method for studying the natural world. It's a process that uses observation and investigation. So looking at the natural world and then doing experiments to gain knowledges about events in nature. Okay? One great example of that, just last week, or maybe even a little bit longer than that, there were 2 hurricanes that came up through the Gulf Coast of the United States, up by Louisiana and Texas. Hurricane Marco, or Tropical Depression Marco, and Hurricane Laura. Okay? Think back, or try to think back, hundreds, if not thousands of years. People used to blame or explain the presence of hurricanes by saying that it was a god. It was Poseidon that was bringing down the wrath of the gods on humans for mistakes that they'd made. Okay? People thought that. They didn't have all of the information. They didn't know exactly how it worked, but they thought that. So fast forward to now, and all of the science that's happened in between there, all right? And now we know that it's due to water temperature and water currents and wind and all of these different things that cause hurricanes to happen and then move across different parts of the world, right? You can do that with anything, right? Any question, any natural event, we can use our science minds to think about what that's all about. So with that being said, we're going to dive into something that we call the scientific method. My hope is that you've heard a little bit about this. If not, you're already familiar with it. But today we're really going to talk about the scientific method. So the scientific method is basically just a series of steps that we as scientists, students, teachers follow to investigate questions, to investigate natural occurrences. There are 6 steps that we normally follow, okay? There's a little picture here, which you may or may not be able to see. You will be able to see this in Schoology when we post the lecture. But for now, just know that this shows the steps of the scientific method. So we're going to talk today about what are those steps and why are they important to what we're doing in biology class, but also to science in general. So, here's what I want you to, the first thing that I really absolutely want you to put a star next to, highlight, write down in your notes. Here are the 6 steps of the scientific method that we're going to be talking about, okay? Ask a question, research and gather information, create a hypothesis, experiment, analyze data, and drawing conclusions. So these are the 6 steps that we want to be aware of. Over here in red, I hope that you can notice that we've made the first letter of each statement kind of bolded in red. If you take the first letter from each of these statements, it spells out arrhead, A-R-H-E-A-D. That's a nice little mnemonic that if you can store that away in your brain, you should be able to always remember the 6 steps of the scientific method. Arrhead, A-R-H-E-A-D. So it's going to be our job today to talk through those steps, give you some examples, run a little experiment, and go from there. Okay? So make sure as we're going along that you're jotting this stuff down in your notes, making sure that you're following along with us. So, the first step, the very first thing that we're going to do with the scientific method is that we're gonna state a problem. We're going to ask a question. Find something that we potentially want to investigate and find an answer for. So if you look at the slide here, you see a couple of things. You see a virus, and you see this wonderful anime character that's wearing this thing on his face. So Mr. Wen, is there something going on right now with a virus and masks?
The coronavirus.
The coronavirus. So that is still going on right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do people wear masks as a result of the coronavirus going around?
They should.
They should, absolutely. I'm not currently wearing a mask because Mr. Wen is socially distanced. He's 6 feet away from me, but I can guarantee I got my mask right here. Whenever I go over by him or by anybody else, I'm going to put that mask on. Okay? So the first thing that we have to do is state a problem. We have this virus, the coronavirus, that's moving across the globe, or has moved across the globe, and we have these masks that we're being asked to wear to help curb the spread of that virus. Okay? So every single time that you do an investigation, you have to start with stating a problem or asking a question. That's step number 1. That's the A in arrhead. So in your notes, I would like for you to write down an answer to question number 1, and we're also going to do it in the live chat. So question number 1 is, what is the question, or what is a question that we have about masks and the coronavirus? So what is a question that you can ask about masks and the coronavirus that we could potentially investigate? So write that down in your notes. And then on the live chat, if your name starts with A through F, I want you to go ahead and write your answer in the live chat, and we'll talk about some of those as they come in. 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes for you guys to do that stuff, jot it down and get in the live chat, and then we'll come back. All right? So as we're waiting for some of those to come in, we got about 30 seconds left in our 1 minute. What's a question that you could ask about masks and the coronavirus? As soon as Mr. Wen sees some of those, hopefully you guys will share. He'll go ahead and share those with us, and we'll talk about it a little bit. So last name A through F. What's a question that you could ask about masks and the coronavirus?
So we have one of the questions. How effective are masks for protecting people from the coronavirus? How effective are masks at preventing two people at an optimal distance from sharing the virus?
Nice.
How effective is wearing a mask as opposed to not wearing one?
Nice.
What caused the coronavirus to mutate and become a big deal since it didn't exist beforehand?
Okay, that's quite the question. All right, so we'll stop there. But wonderful job. So the idea is that when we're thinking about masks and the coronavirus, there's a series of different questions that we could ask and potentially investigate. But step one is always asking that question so that we can get the process started. So let's move on. Step number 2, all right? So when we're thinking about step number 2 of R-HEAD, we have R, and that is researching and gathering information. So before we can go any further to create a hypothesis and test it, we have to gather as much information, make as many observations about the topic or the problem, the question that we have, so that we are ready to go on to the next couple of steps. All right? So my question for you, because I have some pretty good ideas of where I might go to find information, the second question that I want to ask you guys today is, what are some resources that you could use to gather information, to research about masks, about the coronavirus, okay? Or even about any topic. So what are some good resources that as students, you or people in general, that you could use to research those topics? So we're going to go 1 or 2 minutes again, all right? If your last name is G through N, let's go ahead and put your answer to this question in the live chat. You did awesome with the first one, so let's go G through N. Give me some resources. Where would you go if you were going to gather information or research about masks and the coronavirus? All right, let's do it. So make sure you jot these answers down in your personal notes, but also if you're G through N, let's see if we can get some of those resources shared in the live chat. Where would you go to find information about a potential experiment or an investigation about masks and the coronavirus?
We are getting some great responses here. So I'm seeing books and peer-reviewed articles.
Yes.
We're having some government databases.
Yes.
We have the CDC and the WHO, the World Health Organization. We have CK12, which is an online resource that contains a variety of free online textbooks.
I love it. I love it. So when you think about it, those are some fantastic answers. So we're going to websites, the CDC, the World Health Organization. We're going to websites that have basically online libraries. We're looking at peer-reviewed journals. We're looking at books and encyclopedias and talking to people that are experts. So those are all resources that we can use. I'm going to throw one out there just to make sure that we're all on the same page as we move along in this year. Y'all have probably heard of Wikipedia. Okay, Mr. Wen, have you heard of Wikipedia?
Absolutely.
All right. We can use Wikipedia as a resource, but it's a starting point. Okay, it's a great place to go and find out information about a topic, but we don't stop there. We use that as a jumping off point, and then we go to our peer-reviewed articles, we go to our websites, we go to our books and encyclopedias and things like that. So use Wikipedia but don't just stop there. Okay, we need to use the rest of those resources that you guys so happily threw out in the live chat. Okay, and we'll talk more about that as we move through the year. So here we go. Let's move on. So we're going to go to the third part of our scientific method. So we had ask a question, identify a problem. We had gather information or research. So now we're going to land on one that I'm sure you've heard a million times, the hypothesis. All right. So a hypothesis is a possible explanation for a question or a problem using what you know and what you have observed. Okay. Every single time that we do an experiment, let me repeat that. Every single time that we do an experiment or an investigation, we have to create a hypothesis. You have to create a possible explanation for what you're going to see based on what you already know. Okay? So, if you look at this picture, remember we're talking about masks, we're talking about the coronavirus. We have Bill Nye here. Bill Nye is wearing a blue surgical mask, so he's wearing a mask, and he has a candle here. Okay? Really quickly, Mr. Wen, what do you think might be a hypothesis, or what do you think, in general, what do you think Bill Nye is going to be doing based on that picture?
I think Bill Nye is going to try to blow out the candle using the mask.
Oh, I agree. I think Mr. Bill Nye is going to try to blow out that candle while wearing that mask. Okay? So he probably has a question that he came up with. Can I blow out this candle using that mask? I'm sure he's gathered information, he's done some research, and then he's going to come up with a hypothesis. All right? So a hypothesis, that's that formal statement, like we said. I hypothesize that something will happen. So Bill Nye might say, I hypothesize that I will not be able to blow out the candle while wearing a surgical mask. Bam. He's created his hypothesis. Now he's ready to roll on to the next one. Okay? So our question for you, question number 3, and let's go ahead and put this in our notes. What is a possible hypothesis for testing the efficacy of masks by using a candle test? Efficacy just means how effective something is, right? How well it works. So what is a possible hypothesis for testing the efficacy of masks and a candle test? So I'm going to ask you guys for this one, I'm going to ask you to just put it in your notes. All right? We're not going to do any sharing on the live chat just yet. Because we want to get to Mr. Wen so he can show us a little bit about how we might test this. Okay? So let's take again, but maybe 30 seconds this time, a minute at the very most. Go ahead and jot down a possible hypothesis. All right? We can always share these out in our Teams meetings or something like that, but jot that down in your notes and we'll come back in just a few seconds. We'll do about 15 more seconds, and then we'll jump on to our next slide. So we're looking through, in this case, those first 3 steps of the scientific method, asking a question, gathering information, creating our hypothesis, right? And that's going to lead us to step 4, testing our hypothesis, creating an experiment or an investigation that's going to allow us to test our hypothesis. So think about the hypothesis that you wrote down in your notebook. All right, we're going to create an experiment to test those questions about masks and the coronavirus. Okay, so what Mr. Wen has done is brought in 4 different masks. So he brought in mask number 1, which is a surgical mask, just like the ones that we see. He brought in mask number 2, which is this cloth. I think it's a 2-ply cloth mask from the KEA. He brought in this gray mask from Fort Thomas Schools. It's still pretty much a cloth mask, a cotton type mask, but the construction of it is a little bit different from this one. And then he has mask number 4, which is a gator mask, which seemed to be pretty popular with all different kinds of people. So we have our gator mask. Okay? So what we're ultimately going to do, or what Mr. Wen is going to do, is run through an experiment to see how could we potentially test the efficiency or the efficacy of those masks. So I'm going to turn you guys around. I'm going to point you to Mr. Wen. and we're going to roll through that. Okay? So here we go.
Alrighty, so we have our 4 masks located here, and we have our candle here. So all we're going to do is we're going to light this candle. And we're going to determine whether or not these masks will be able to blow out the candle. Now, we got to do something beforehand. We got to make sure that Mr. Ewald didn't give me a trick candle. So we want to make sure that we test this experiment first, just to make sure that everything is fair in terms of the candle itself. So, Mr. Ewald, what do I need to do?
I think you need to try to blow that candle out without a mask on.
Alrighty, so we're going to blow this candle out. Okay, so we're going to blow this candle out, and we're probably going to change candles here in just a second. But we're going to see whether or not, just to make sure that the candles that we're using can be blown out. Okay,
All right.
so this one is blown out. As you can see, same exact type of candle. So all we're going to do is use this one now. All right, so we're going to test our first mask, which, if you remember, is the surgical mask. All right, in chat, if your name, your last name is A through M, tell me whether or not this mask will blow out the candle. Okay, just write a yes or a no. Actually, let's make it everybody. Okay, so everybody just write yes or no. Will this mask blow out the candle? Okay, just a little reminder, Mr. Ewald. Is a yes good or bad in the spreading of the coronavirus?
In this case, a yes will be bad, because that would mean that you're going to be able to blow the candle out. All right, so we're getting some answers in here. Heavy on the yeses at the very beginning. Most students are saying that yes, in fact, you will be able to blow out the candle with the surgical mask.
Okay.
So let's do it.
All right, now, just to talk about procedure, I'm going to do 2 heavy puffs, do heavy breaths to make sure that I'm giving it a good college effort. Ooh.
Oh, man.
All right, so that one there was blown out. Those surgical masks, they're really good at a certain distance. So you got to make sure that you're keeping that social distance, that we're looking at those guidelines. Alrighty, mask number 2. Okay, just very simple yes or no. What do you guys think? Will the fabric mask, will it blow out the candle?
So what do you guys think? Fabric mask, 2-ply. Will Mr. Wen be able to blow out the candle using the fabric mask? We got a yes, another yes, a no. Ooh, it's kind of 50-50 right now. Bouncing back and forth between. This one is much closer to 50-50, yes and no.
Okay. So we're ready. All right. So this is the fabric mask from KEA.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Wah, wah, wah.
So again, really is important to make sure that you wear the proper mask or you keep the proper social distance. All right, mask number 3. This is the Fort Thomas mask that they sent us. Okay, so same thing, guys. Yes or no?
Let's see what you think. So again, it's still a cloth type mask. It's just that the construction of it is a little bit different. So what do you guys think? The Fort Thomas mask, will we be able to see that candle being blown out, or is it going to stay lit? Let's see. We got a no right off the bat, followed by a yes and another yes. Okay, so 50-50 so far. You know, I would say, even though we've had a couple of no's, I would say that we're leaning heavily towards yes for this one.
Okay, leaning heavily towards yes. Okay, so again, 2 big puffs, just to make sure that we do this experiment right.
Oh, it didn't even move.
Didn't even flicker.
Wow.
Okay, thank you very much, Fort Thomas, for sending us those awesome masks. And then the last one, the gator mask.
All right. So in the chat there, let us know what you think about. This is a cloth gator mask, so it's a little bit different than the like stretchy, kind of like, I'm blanking on what they're made out of.
Polyester?
Polyester, neoprene, those kind of masks. This one is a little bit more like cloth. So throw it in the chat. What do you think? Ooh. Heavy yes.
Okay,
You're going to be
heavy
able to blow
yeses.
it out. Well, somebody said 100% yes. I like it.
All right, here we go. Okay, so the gator mask.
Oh, there we go again.
Okay, so the thing to remember, guys, is that not all these masks are created equal. Not only that, but we also know that any mask is better than no mask at all. So you want to make sure that you follow your proper protocols, your Safe Schools guidelines for social distancing. And remember, guys, we are professionals. Please do not try this at home.
You'll see someone at the museum. What? I cut up.
All right, guys. Big thanks to Mr. Wen for running through that demonstration, that experiment with us. Again, think about the masks that you wear. Think about keeping those social distances, sanitizing your hands, doing all that stuff. But that's a great little experiment. It was super quick based on our question and our hypothesis and our research to do that. So something that we want to think about. As we set up and run experiments, there are some things that we need to think about when we're doing that, and those are called variables. I'm going to guess that the large majority of us have heard of variables before. Again, based on other science classes you've taken, you probably talked a lot about them last year in physics. So a variable is any quantity that can have more than a single value. All right? These things are going to potentially change within an experiment or as a result of an experiment. Okay? So we want to pay attention. We want to pay attention to variables, and we're going to look at 4 of them. So I'm going to run through 4 slides here to talk about the 4 different variables that we need to be aware of. In order to do that, we're going to use the example of using 3 fertilizers to test plant growth. So we're going to leave the coronavirus and the masks behind for just a second, and we're going to look at an experiment using 3 fertilizers to test plant growth. Okay, possible factors we might be looking at: plant type, amount of sunlight, amount of water, the temperature in the room or in the environment where the plant is, type of soil, and type of fertilizer. So let's look at these variables. The first variable that we're interested in is our dependent variable. Okay? The dependent variable is always going to be the variable that you as an experimenter or me as an experimenter that we measure, or the data that we collect. 100% of the time, the dependent variable is going to be the variable that we measure or the data that we collect. So let's look at this really quickly. We have a chart here that shows us some data from an experiment using fertilizer on plants. If you look right here, okay, height after 2 weeks, this is our dependent variable because that's what we're collecting. That's the data. That's what we're measuring. So each time we do an experiment, each time we do an investigation, we are going to have a dependent variable, the variable that we measure. All right? Now, within the dependent variable, there can be two different types of data that we collect. We can collect something called qualitative data, and we can collect something called quantitative data. Qualitative data, another way to say that is that it's categorical data. All right? For example, a color. Did something happen? A yes or a no. Okay? It's still data. We're still collecting it, but we call that qualitative data. We can also collect quantitative data or continuous data. So these are numbers. These are values. For example, height, the height of something, the weight of something, the number of people in a room, speed, volume, mass, right? Those are all quantitative pieces of data, right? So Mr. Nguyen, really quickly, let's think back to the coronavirus mask and candle experiment. What kind of data were we collecting? What do you think?
I believe it's qualitative data.
It is 100% qualitative because,
We were just really answering a yes or a no question. We didn't collect any numbers.
bam. So we fall right under here with qualitative. There was no quantitative data that we collected. All right? And that's for the dependent variable. So let's roll on. Independent variable. Again, hopefully you've heard about this, but we're going to talk about it really quickly. Okay? So the independent variable is the variable that you, as the experimenter, change in an experiment. Okay? You change it. Now, if we look at this experiment, okay? Again, we have the same chart, but we've highlighted this box. The type of fertilizer is the independent variable because we, as the experimenter, use 3 different types of fertilizer, but we also had one situation down here where we didn't use any. Now, why did we change the independent variable? To see how it affected the dependent variable. So in experiments, you are going to change the independent variable to see how it influences the dependent variable. Okay? Dependent variable we measure, independent variable you as the experimenter, you manipulator, change that. Okay, let's roll on. Constant, incredibly important. Dependent, independent, both obviously very important, but constants are important too. We got the same chart again. Okay, remember this was our dependent, this was our independent. If you look at this highlighted portion right here, you should probably recognize something right off the bat that is the same for all of these. They stay the same. Okay, so constants or constant variables, you as the experimenter, you keep those the same the whole time. 6 hours per day of sunlight, 4 ounces every 3 days of water. We're going to use the same type of plant. So those are all constant variables, right, that we want to keep the same. That way, we can be pretty sure that it's our independent variable that's influencing our dependent variable. We don't want to let anything else potentially influence it, so we're going to keep those things constant. All right, think about that. And last but certainly not least, all right, we're going to talk about something which we call a control. Okay, so a control, this is the standard. Okay, this is what we are going to compare everything else in our experiment to. All right, and how do we set up a control? Well, we don't give it the treatment with the independent variable. All right, so check this out. So we have the same chart, but now we're looking at the 4th plant down here. Okay, what you notice right now is that it doesn't get the independent variable. So we are very simply saying, how does the plant grow without fertilizer? So we let it grow, we record that quantitative dependent variable, and then what do we do with that number? Well, we compare this to that one, fertilizer C. We compare this to fertilizer B. We compare this to fertilizer A. So we can make those comparisons. We can see how the different fertilizers might have changed the growth of the plant. Okay, so really quickly, and then we'll move on. Dependent variable, independent variable, constant variables or constants, and then we have our control. 4 things that we really have to be aware of when we're setting up and running experiments. So I got some questions for you. Here we go. Question number 4. In your notes, I would like for you to write down what is the dependent variable from our coronavirus mask and candle experiment. So in other words, what did you measure? What did we measure? Okay? So in your notes, jot down what our dependent variable was, and I'm going to ask, let's do everybody for this one, A through Z. All right, let's do A through Z. What do you think the dependent variable was? Throw that into the live chat. We'll come back in 30 seconds, maybe a minute. All right, dependent variable, what do you think?
Alrighty, so we're getting some responses here. Thank you guys again for participating in the live lecture. Whether or not the candle was blown out,
Yes.
will the candle blow out? If the candle went out or not, whether the candle blew out. I think we nailed it.
We nailed it, all right? So the dependent variable for our coronavirus mask and candle experiment was, in fact, whether or not that candle was blown out while Mr. Wen was wearing those different masks. Fantastic. Let's roll on. Question number 5, all right? In your notes, what is the independent variable, or what was the independent variable in our coronavirus mask and candle experiment? In other words, what did we as the experimenters, what did we change? All right, I want you to throw those into your notes, and then let's do a smaller group here. Let's do E through K. That's a pretty small group. E through K. If your last name is E through K, put in the live chat what you think the independent variable might be. We'll take 1 minute to get you to jot it down and throw it in the chat, and we'll go from there.
Alrighty, we're getting some responses here. The mask, the different masks, the type of mask. Again, great job, guys. You are nailing it.
Yeah, once again, you nailed it. Perfect. Okay, independent variable, different types of masks. That's what we as the experimenter changed. Fantastic. In your notes, question number 6, I want you to write down, and we're talking about the control. So what is or what was the control in our coronavirus mask and candle experiment? In other words, which one or which setup did not have the independent variable? So what was the control that Mr. Wen showed you when he was doing that experiment? Okay, 1 minute, put the answer to that question in your notes, and then let's do O through Z. Oz. O through Z, if that's your last name, go ahead and throw those answers into the live chat. I set my timer for 1 minute, and we'll go from there. Okay, question number 6. All right, about 20 seconds remaining. Jot those answers down in your notes on your end. Put them into the live chat if you can.
Alrighty, we're getting some responses. When he blew the candle out without the mask, no mask. blew out the candle with no mask, no mask, no mask on. Guys, again, phenomenal job.
Yeah, I mean, we already know that you're gonna absolutely kill it when we ask the question, and then you back it up, right? Fantastic job answering that question. All right, one more. You probably know where this is going because we're talking about variables. Question number 7. In your notes, what is the constant, or what were some constants that you noticed in the experiment with the coronavirus mask and the candle? In other words, what did not change throughout the experiment? Okay, let's do L through O. Last name L through O. Throw the answer to that bad boy into the live chat so that we can see where you are. So what is a constant from the experiment? Or you could even put a couple. What did you notice as multiple constants? Things that didn't change during that experiment. Tell us what you got. 1 minute. Here we go.
Like 4 letters.
Hopefully we have a couple people that fall into that range. Mr. Wen, definitely reminded me that that's a very small range of names. But go ahead and get those into your, the answer into your notes, and then if you happen to be L through O, throw those into the live chat. I know you guys are going to do awesome, but just messing.
Alrighty, we're already getting some responses. Same person, same candle, same amount of breaths, same environment, the force of the breath, the type of candle, the lighter, the flammable material, same person.
Yes.
Awesome job.
Again, right? So those are all things that we as experimenters, or Mr. Wen, that he wants to keep exactly the same every single time that he did that experiment so that he could fall back on it was in fact just the mask that was causing a difference. You guys are awesome, great answers, all right? So we talked about dependent, independent, control, and now the constant. So let's roll on. Okay. So we're back to R head, okay? And we're now looking at the A portion. So the A portion of R head is we're going to analyze the data that we collect during the experiment. So we want to create tables. We want to create charts. We want to create graphs. We want to choose the best possible tool to use to display and help us analyze our data. Why do that? Well, because that's going to give us the good stuff. That's going to give us the evidence that's going to help us truly do the next part, which I'll get to here in just a second. All right, so I'm going to ask you to do another thing. So we're on to question number 8. So in order to analyze our data, I'm going to ask you to create a chart. All right, here's the chart. You guys have made a million of these, so I feel like you could probably do that. But I want you to create a chart for the coronavirus mask and candle experiment. All right, on the left side we have type of mask. On the right side we have results of the candle test. Please remember, okay, doesn't really matter what order you put these in. You can do 1 through 4. You can put the names of the masks. That's fine. And remember over here we have qualitative data. Yes or no. Okay? Again, we'll probably maybe do a little bit more than 1 minute so that you guys can draw this out in your notes. But go ahead and fill that out because we want to do that step, that analyzing the data portion of the scientific method. Okay, so I'm going to step off for a second. Go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back together. We'll get close to the end. All right, keep up. You guys are awesome. I can't say it enough. Awesome. Keep it up. All right. So hopefully you got that into your notes on your end. We're not going to have you do anything in the live chat or share it out, but make sure that you have that. All right. So let's roll on to the D portion of our head. We want to draw a conclusion. Okay. So we want to take everything that we've learned in an experiment, the analysis that we did on the data that we collected, and we want to draw a conclusion to say whether or not we support our original hypothesis. Okay? So for the hypothesis to be considered valid and widely accepted, this experiment also has to be repeatable. Okay? So when we draw conclusions, I would say almost all of the time we share that information with other people, with other scientists, with students, with teachers, because we want those other people to be able to repeat our experiment and see if their conclusions are the same as ours. So the last thing that we do within the scientific method is we draw our conclusions. We take everything that we've collected up to this point and we create a conclusion. So let's hop to this last little slide here. Question number 9. This is where we're going to finish up the scientific method. Was your original hypothesis supported? So you basically do 2 things when you do this part. Okay? You either say, let's go with yes. You either say, yes, my original hypothesis was supported because Mr. Wen didn't blow out the candle using the Fort Thomas mask. Or you can say, no, my original hypothesis was not supported because, and you know where to go with that. All right? So we take everything that we've learned with the data in the experiment and we say whether or not we support our hypothesis. Okay? So what I would like for you guys to do is, in your own notes, go ahead and jot that down. What would your conclusion be? I'm going to open it up to everybody. Okay? Let's have everybody over the next minute throw those answers into the live chat so that Mr. Wen and I can hear a little bit about what you guys are thinking for those conclusions. Just like we've been doing, I think we're doing pretty good on time. Just like we've been doing, we're going to take about a minute, okay? Figure out those conclusions, throw them into that live chat. We do have one more slide after this, and then we're going to let you guys go for the day, right? Awesome work. Let's do it. All right, we got about 30 seconds, guys. Keep working on that question number 9. Again, put it in your notes, toss it into the live chat. Mr. Wen's going to share some of them with me as they come in here. Hopefully they will. Nothing yet? That's okay. All right, so as you guys put those into the chat, I'm going to go ahead and jump on to this last little part here. Our discussion of the scientific method has pretty much come to a close, but there is one more thing, a couple more super important things that we want to talk about.
Okay, so I've got some responses. No, my original hypothesis was not supported. I thought that every mask would fail the test and blow out the candle, as masks are not meant to be used at that proximity.
Oh, all right.
Yes, my original hypothesis was supported because Mr. Wen did not blow out the candle with the third mask. My original hypothesis was not correct because the candle was blown out by the surgical mask rather than the Fort Thomas one.
All right. So yeah, at that point, when you're either supporting or not supporting your hypothesis, you're drawing back to your original hypothesis. So those are going to vary a little bit, but you want to be able to draw those conclusions. Awesome work, guys. That brings us to this last little bit here. You may have noticed if you've been on Schoology today looking at my materials or looking at Mr. Wen's materials that there are a couple of things that we want you to do as we conclude class. Okay? So we want you to make sure that you hop back onto Schoology and find out how to submit the questions that we did during the lecture. Is it okay if I talk about yours?
Sure.
So for my class, there is a discussion board that should be published. You're going to go into that discussion board, you're going to answer the questions from the lecture, and you're going to submit that. All right? And then you're good to go for that part. For Mr. Wen, he's going to have you snap a picture of your notes, making sure that you can see the answers to those questions. You're going to submit those onto Schoology, and you're good to go. So make sure that you go to Schoology and you find those spots to submit the stuff from the live lecture. What we also want you to do is, while you're in Schoology, check to see if there's any other practice. I know that I'm going to have you guys do some scientific method practice, and I'm 100% positive that Mr. Wen's going to have you do some practice too. So while you're in Schoology, check to make sure that you know where that is. My due date for this part, the practice, is Friday. Mr. Wen's due date for that practice is also Friday. So make sure that you pay attention to those, and then pay attention to information coming from either me or Mr. Wen about our time-bound event for Friday. It could be full class, it could be small group, it could just be individual, so make sure that you're paying attention to Microsoft Teams for those time-bound events. All right? Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are awesome. Your participation was incredible. The way you answered those questions, the way you guys were in it and working with me and Mr. Wen, we couldn't be happier. So enjoy the rest of your day. Let us know if you have any questions, and we will see you back on Friday. All right? Take care, guys. Later.